Hello and welcome to KSPN TV Sports Center. I'm Sammy Fawn alongside Judo Kanyas, and we wrapped up yet another week of Conejo Oaks baseball. It was their third week of the 2025 season, and this week the Oaks went 2-3, and the week all ended in brutal fashion on a devastating walk-off 8-7 upset loss against the MLB Academy Barons on the road. Jude, it was their third road game of the season, and the Oaks, they had everything going for them in that ninth inning. They were ahead by 4 runs. It was a 7-3 lead with Braden Lowe on the mound. The Barons had two runners on, but the Oaks were one out away. But the Barons, they had everything going for them right at the end, scored a couple runs, and then with two runners on base, Tommy Gooden delivered the walk-off long ball for the Barons when they needed it most.
Yeah, no, certainly it was a tough week. There's no way to sugarcoat this game. I mean, they lost three out of the five matches they played this week, and I find this similar theme among the three games is the Oaks not taking advantage of when they have an opportunity to win a game. I mean, outside of the Riptide game where they lost 14-3, talking to Coach David Solis, that was kind of a one-off game. The OC Riptide were on fire from the start in that game and pretty much ran with it through 9 innings. But I think the theme, like I mentioned, is the Oaks just self-inflicted wounds and not taking advantage of opportunities really cost them, especially we saw as the Barons scored 5 runs in that ninth inning on Sunday.
Yes, indeed. And another thing that we have not seen from the Oaks so far this season is a win on the road. Now, we've talked about, the extensive bus rides that the Oaks have to take going from Thousand Oaks to we've seen, Compton, California and Irvine. And this Tuesday, they'll be heading to Pasadena against the Arroyo Seco Saints. But that away loss curse has not been broken yet. The Oaks came so close to that on Sunday, but just have not seen the Oaks find that luck on the road. What do you think? Where do you think they fall a little short? What do you think doesn't work for them from what we've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me when I look back at the two games that they played on the road this weekend was, I think the Barons game was not taking advantage of the opportunities. I mean, I could repeat myself 1,000 times, but truly, that was an inning in this bottom of the seventh inning where the Barons left guy stranded on base, and then the Oaks were able to take advantage, score 4 runs in that eighth, score another run in the ninth. And I think we're both thinking to ourselves, okay, they can put this a game right here. Braden Lowe, he's been productive on the mound, and they just didn't take advantage right there. And I think we saw on Friday in that loss on the road, it was truly the bats just we didn't see that power from the bats. The Riptide pitchers were dealing, especially their first two guys. And so I think when I look at in totality, I think both road games kind of hold different weights of like how they lost. But overall, I mean, they're going to have to find some rhythm because they now go on the road for 4 out of the 5 games this week.
Yeah, the pitching that the Oaks faced, they were just outpitched. And you got to give credit to Michael Ersbomber, the starting pitcher for the OC Riptide, embarking on 4 gutsy innings. This kid, he's still fresh. He's fresh into college now, committed to Stanford University, and he's a guy among others that the Oaks have to look out for on the mound. Well, now moving on to the current standings in the California Collegiate League. The Conejo Oaks currently in third place, right behind the Arroyo Seco Saints. Now, the Oaks, they've played a couple of games against the Arroyo Seco Saints. They beat them 11-2 in one game. That was 2 Sundays ago now. And then the Arroyo Seco Saints, they responded big with an 8-0 shutout loss. And Jude, we talked about again, and correct me if I'm wrong, that 8-0 loss, the Oaks, first of all, they had the bases loaded twice in that game and once with nobody out, and they couldn't capitalize. And the Oaks, they're now pretty even with the Saints. And what do you think the mentality is going to be like for the Oaks on the road this time?
Well, I think it's both. You want to get revenge for what happened, getting shut out in the first shutout loss for the Oaks this season, but then also you want to get a road game under your belt to win. This is obviously a team in the Oaks that have already championship pedigree from last season. But if you look in totality, they do play a lot of home games this season. But when you talk about going to the playoffs, going into maybe potentially the state playoffs, those are games where you're most likely going to play on the road. You have a team like the Santa Barbara Foresters, the Arroyo Seco Saints, both teams that are competing very well right now. And even the OC Riptide that sit at fourth place, they're 7-6. They started 0-3. So these are all potential avenues of where you might be able to, where you might be going on the road in the playoffs. And, I mean, it's still early, so you don't want to overreact to what the Oaks are doing on the road right now, but it's certainly a glimpse of what might be to come. And especially, like I said, Sammy, this is a week where the Oaks have an opportunity to prove it, and it starts with the Saints on Tuesday night.
Yeah, they have two opportunities on the road this week with the Arroyo Seco Saints tomorrow night at Jackie Robinson Memorial Field, right next door to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. And then this coming Friday, they'll be on the road at Eddie Matthews Field in Santa Barbara against the first place Santa Barbara Foresters, 10-2 on the season. The Oaks, they've played against the Foresters twice. The first time was a 14-5 loss, and the second time the Oaks responded with a win, a 9-5 win. But certainly a lot of work that the Oaks will have to undertake this coming week. But, and we take a look at this past week and the upcoming week. The Oaks, as we mentioned, they won 2 out of 5 games and dropped 3, 2 of which were on the road. And as we mentioned, tomorrow, the Oaks will face the Arroyo Seco Saints. The Oaks will face the Saints 2 days in a row, tomorrow and Wednesday. Now, Wednesday, the Oaks will be home to host the Arroyo Seco Saints at George Sparky Anderson Field, but 2 consecutive games on the road. This will be the longest break that we've seen the Oaks take so far from being at home.
Yeah, no, certainly, and it goes back to these are the games you have to take advantage of. I mean, you look at it as like what could be to come, and as we head pretty much into the month of July, where we have 1 month left of action, and it's already flown that we're already here on June 23rd, entering the final week of June baseball in the California Collegiate League. But no, I think Sammy, this is a big week. I think we've seen what the Oaks can do when they are at their best and when the bats are swinging, when they're getting their guys on base, and they take advantage of those guys on base. But we've also seen when some of their guys struggle against really good pitchers. We talked about the OC Riptide already, and when they're dealing with guys who are throwing 90 to 95, and especially with good control of their pitches, they are put in struggling situations. And so they're gonna have to figure that out. Luckily, you have a little bit more time to do it, but you don't have that much more time to figure it out. So I think for the Oaks, this is an opportunity to really put their stamp on, okay, we're not just a home team. We can really win on the road this week.
Yeah, and offensively speaking, the Oaks do have a guy who has been consistent this week, as we've talked about. Our pick for the offensive player of the week, Lucas Danuitz. He had a 5-hit week, including 3 hits against the Orange County Riptide this past Friday night at Great Park. And we talked about his bat seemed to be the most alive out of all of them. I mean, he got that game started with that first pitch triple to right field in that first inning. Him and Wilkes had the only 2 hits for the first 5 innings. And then the Oaks bats, they didn't wake up until sadly it was too late. But offense, the Oaks, they're going to have to capitalize on every single opportunity they get at the plate. And when they have runners in scoring positions, it's going to be important to do the little things to score runs and take advantage and really get into the other pitcher's bullpen. And, pitching wise, the Oaks, they had their ups and downs this week, but I think they have a good, strong bullpen and pitching staff that can carry the Oaks through this week as well.
No, certainly. And first on Lucas Danuitz, I mean, we're talking about a guy that changed the game, right? We would have seen the Oaks with 4 losses this week. And I'm sorry, I apologize, with only 1 win this week rather than 2. I mean, he had the RBI single in the 8th inning of that Barons game on Saturday that brought in the tying run to even put Tommy Kendalinger in a position to walk it off in the bottom of the 9th inning. So I think just his clutch gene that we've seen when the Oaks have needed him, he has delivered. And then you talk about Tate Foxen, who's our pitcher of the week this week. We only saw him in 1 inning, but I think it was probably the best inning we've seen of pitching this week from the Conejo Oaks. He struck out all 3 batters he faced, retired the side in the bottom of the 9th inning to be able to get the win versus the Barons. And that was absolutely clutch. I mean, that was another game where it was 2-1 situation. The Barons, they weren't on their best game that we saw them like on Sunday, but they still, all their bats were active, and Tate Foxen was able to shut down the side. And so I think those 2 players are going to be instrumental looking forward when you talk about the Oaks wanting to make a playoff run.
Definitely. And, speaking of which, in that walk-off win, you saw the Oaks come back after tying the game in the 8th inning. And, the difference maker as it started out was that misplay in center field by Hunter Backstrom and the Oaks tying the game. And then bottom of the 9th inning, the Oaks set the stage, bases loaded, 1 out. Tommy Kendlinger delivering the walk-off RBI single. And then, The Barons, they returned the favor in a very upsetting way for the Oaks. We saw back-to-back wins, pretty much back-to-back walk-off wins and back-to-back games that both losing teams will tell you that they should have won those games. But the Oaks, they're a team that can put the most upsetting loss behind them, and they will certainly carry that strong mindset into this coming week. And we will see everyone at Jackie Robinson Memorial Field as the Oaks will be hosted by the Arroyo Seco Saints in the first out of 2 games in a row that they will play against the Saints. So the Saints will be home on Tuesday at Jackie Robinson Memorial Field. And to follow that, the Oaks will host the Saints on Wednesday. Well, that's all the time we have. This has been KSPN TV Sports Center alongside Judo Kanyas. I'm Sammy Fawn, and we will see you next time.